It has been a while since we talked about Starfield, and that's not because there is a lack of topics. As a matter of fact, this game is still getting updates, and one of them just dropped a few days ago. It is somewhat surprising considering the decreasing player count, and even that is somewhat subjective, because while it is true that the player count went down significantly, if you take a look at the big picture, the numbers on Steam might look really low right now, barely able to scratch the 6K mark on weekends, but this article, for example, claims that there were over 30,000 players daily over the course of one weekend on the Xbox side. And that is also not counting the people who pirated this game or are playing in offline mode. So if you count all sources, the overall player count is really not that low for a single player game that came out almost 2 years ago. In other words, while some people already forgot this game ever existed, its fanbase is still very much active. The same, however, cannot be said about Bethesda. While the game does receive updates every now and then, the last big update dropped around 2 months ago, on the 22nd of May, update 1.15.216, and the contents of this update were actually not that impressive, while the majority of the so-called new features heavily concentrated on the creation kit, unless you were really hyped to play the game on extreme low resolution. Hell yeah, pixels! And other than that, while it looks like it is really a lot, an impressive wall of text right here, all we got are fixes, fixes and more fixes. Gameplay fixes, quest fixes, vehicle fixes, you name it. I said it before and I'm gonna say it now. The only thing in Bethesda games we will never run out of are things to fix. If you think though that this big update was kinda disappointing and had no real substance, prepare to think again. Or more like to not think in this case, because the update notes for the recent update, update 1.15.222, the beta update that is now available on Steam, are indeed a bit shorter. Minor improvements to format and display in Creations menu addressed an issue that could cause that extreme temperature gear to appear incorrectly, minor improvements to sorting in the menus menu, general crash and stability fixes. Yes, seriously, it is hard to say why this is even an experimental beta update, or why they did not even post it on the official Bethesda side. Was it out of shame or because they themselves acknowledge its insignificance that way? But yes, there is really not much to talk about here. Of course, Bethesda also claimed that they are already working on the next update for Starfield. The team claimed they will share the exciting things they have planned for this game in the coming month. In other words, promises. We got no update on the second DLC that is theoretically supposed to be released in September or October of this year, at least if we go with what Todd Howard said back in June 24. Back then, while talking about major DLCs and Shattered Space in particular, Tom Howard claimed that the second DLC is already in the works. He mentioned that Bethesda regrets stopping the work on Skyrim and Fallout 4 expansions back then way too soon, and that the new DLCs for Starfield are planned to be released once every year. There are also rumors circulating that the next big DLC will go by the name Starborn and feature a big story expansion for this faction, similar how Shattered Space concentrated on House Va'ruun. If such a DLC is really in the works, it probably will be revealed at Gamescom 25 in late August, which would also lead to a potential release in October or the following month, which would be absolutely in line with Bethesda's original goal to release yearly DLCs. Many people also suspect it might shadow drop, similar to how it was the case with the Oblivion Remastered release, which was a huge success, so it absolutely is a possibility that Bethesda would try a similar approach again. However, all that is based on rumors, and considering how poorly the first DLC, Shattered Space, was received, calling it Shattered Future would be more fitting, because they shattered these games. So whether we will really see more DLCs for Starfield that fast or at all remains to be seen. One thing we can count upon, however, is the modding community, because even with the release of the Elder Scrolls Oblivion Remastered, that certainly drew a lot of modders over with its fiery grasp, the modding on Starfield still continues very strong. Almost 500 mods have been released on the Nexus alone in the last couple of months, so we will definitely have a lot to look at in future videos. We also got a somewhat bigger treat recently, the Watchtower Creation DLC that got released in May, made by the famous modder King Geth, the creator of the well-known Sim Settlements mod series for Fallout 4. The Watchtower expansion is not free, of course, since King Geth, or more like their team, is now a part of the so-called Verified Creators program. In other words, the Watchtower is a creation on Bethesda.net and not a Nexus mod. You can get it for around 10 euros. It might not be quite as big as an official DLC by Bethesda. It is definitely smaller than Shattered Space in terms of file size and overall content. It does, however, offer a very decent amount of new content, adding a new faction, new quests and missions, and even some new gameplay mechanics, giving you the ability to build and commandeer your own fleet, use orbital strike support from your ships while on planet surface, and much more. Also, contrary to Shattered Space, the Watchtower actually got a lot of praise for its quality and scope. Also definitely worth mentioning is that a DLC-sized mod called Defying Fire has been in development for quite some time now, a mod by Firestarter Mods that is also supposed to bring a huge amount of new content, offering a new storyline with main and side quests, new locations including a really big city, and even new companions. So definitely a project of a bigger scale. A reveal trailer for Defying Fire has been released 8 months ago, which leads to believe that it has been in development for at least a year by now, and we might get more news on it soon. Since this project is still in development and Firestarter mods have not been accepted in the Verified Creators program yet, we do not know whether this DLC will be free or not, but considering its scale, it is definitely something to look forward to. So looking at its current state, Starfield is definitely not done yet, and we will certainly have something to talk about in the near future. Until then, I thank you all for watching, and see you around.